Hello, fellow funksters out there in internet land and friends from all over and newcomers to the show. This is Funk the State with your host, myself, Collin Sleuth. Some of you may know me in real life. Some of you may know me in surreal life. And some of you may just be finding out about me right now. So I'm glad to meet you, and I hope you enjoy my show here on the Voluntary Virtues Network, Mike Shanklin's new network that's aiming to be 24/7 voluntarist content. You too can get a show if you are into the voluntarist movement, the NAP, things like that. You pretty much can come with your own fresh style and fresh flavor, bring something new to the network. Mike Shanklin wants you, if you're a consistent freedom lover and voluntarist, libertarian anarchist, he wants you to come try out your own show on this network. And I recommend you do. It's great for getting your thoughts organized and producing your own content and reflecting on it. That's what I've been doing. I've been practicing my own videos in my spare time, trying to sharpen up my skills, and hopefully that's going to eventually happen. I'm looking forward to my skills being sharpened sometime coming up here. Last week I was supposed to have a show, and I did, and some of you may have tried to tune into it. It looks like 25 people tried to tune into it, and unfortunately it was not functional. The microphone, I tried to use a new microphone. That microphone kept cutting out the whole time. I don't know what the problem is, so I went back to the old microphone. I'm going to try and work forward from here, and I know a bunch of you other guys with your shows are getting through technical difficulties too, and hopefully that's fine, and we're all going to get through this together and bring forward some really great content. And hopefully just keep pumping out the ideas out there. So there's hundreds of videos every week from the voluntarist, anarcho-libertarian perspective, so that all the new people who are learning about these ideas will have so many new places to get the information, to spread the information. Not just one person who's we're going to all ride the back of, not just Peter Schiff or whoever else, not just Stefan Molyneux. Though also this station, the Voluntary Virtues Network, as many of you know, is hopefully going to be, or is going to be, having some of these big wigs like Stefan Molyneux, hopefully Jeff Berwick, and other favorite libertarians that are out there that are really great, and we want to see their content all on one channel. I would just like to leave the channel on 24/7 and and then just do whatever I do. I'm washing the dishes and doing the things I do, and have this in the background so that I can keep that liberty and that voluntarist philosophy, keeping it going in the background of my mind, so that I can sharpen my skills and my philosophy here with all of you, and that's what I'm so excited about. So that was a long intro about how great the Voluntary Virtues Network is and what it can do. And so we thank Mike Shanklin, and he's heard that enough. So yeah, I missed last week, but if you haven't got enough of Collin Sleuth, you can go check out the interview I did on the Emancipated Human show with my friend Luis Fernando Mises, and he's a great guy, and he's really cool, and we had a really good, there's some technical difficulties in that show too, but if you can sit through them and be patient, I think I swear a couple times when things screw up, so I guess I can't do that, but we get the conversation going, and we have a really great time, and we talk about some really interesting things about parenting, what we ended up calling it praxeological parenting. Louise makes some really great points. I talk about some sort of anecdotal events that occur with my children in parenting, in particular a conflict that happened when there was a bunch of young boys around, and they were fighting over $50. You can go check it out. I helped them I tried to help these young boys solve this problem in a sort of libertarian judicial manner. They all have a strong concern for property rights and their own property rights and ethics that derive from property rights is just natural for these kids. And so I discussed how I was able to, give them some ideas how to solve a problem that otherwise would have been a fight. It was going to be a fist fight, and instead we found a peaceful resolution, and hopefully it's going to be solved in time. It's something that will take some time. You can go check out that interview. Go watch Luis Fernando Misi's show every week. When it comes out, you'll see it posted on the Voluntary Virtues Network. So, summer's finally here up where I live. I live in this top of this mountain where it stays, and it's in Canada, so it's pretty cold in the winter. It's not really cold in the winter here for Canada, but it is for anywhere else in the world. And it just stays spring for right until the middle of summer. So today or yesterday was the first day of summer, it was solstice or something like this, and it's supposed to be the longest day of the year, and that marks the beginning of summer here where I live. So we all got out onto the beach today with all the kids, and it was great. Kids were just playing and splashing and having their own educational circles, digging in the mud and collecting tadpoles or whatever they do, and playing in the reeds and riding the big inflatable alligator. And actually there was music, great musical event in my neighborhood where DJs were playing music on the beach. So this is the kind of thing. It's just a great place to live where I live. It's a small town. People are about having the alternative lifestyle, basically without knowing explicitly the voluntarist ethic, they sort of live it in a large degree, like most people do. So it was a really great day. I'm really happy that summer is here. I hope you guys are all getting out into the sun and enjoying nature and the world and the season. And so that brings me to something I talked about last week in my show that everybody would have missed because the microphone was clicking out, was this issue. It was a warmer day earlier, a couple weeks ago, and my children did what children everywhere or in the Western world have been doing for decades, and apparently for at least decades. They went out and started their own lemonade stand. So I kind of had a big discussion about this about a week and a half ago, and I talked about it on last week's show, but it didn't get to you guys, so I'm going to cover it here because it's important. They went and had a lemonade stand. They made a bunch of money, bought a bunch of ice cream. Everything was hunky-dory. The next day they did it again. They sell all their lemonade. The last customer ends up being a cop who does buy their lemonade, which is great. He was nice, even though he was dressed in a costume which was meant to signify his authority over your life. He still was really cool and mellow, and he's that kind of cop that everybody talks about. He's like, that's the exception to the rule that proves the rule and all these things. But he couldn't just let it be, and he makes some kind of joke, or he insinuated some way. It's hard to understand what he was saying because I was not there for a moment while my son was running this lemonade stand with his sister, and the cop says something to the effect of, like, next time you guys are going to need to have yourselves a license. And he mentioned it 3 times, license this, license that. Everybody thinks it's a big joke. I don't know how we're supposed to guess if the police officer is making a joke about the law he's claiming that has to be enforced. How are we supposed to know that? A lot of people who will be watching the show will remember this from a couple weeks ago on my Facebook thread there, where I was going full lemonade stand and describing the scenario, what it was like for me to call City Hall to try and get answers. I went to the police station and talked to some of the police officers there who were very polite and kind and generous and without any flaws, and total angelic, perfect human beings which could never cause any harm in any possible way. And I talked to the City Hall people. Talking to the City Hall people is very interesting because they said, no, there's not a law, but there could be a law if everyone just decides to just say that it is a law. We could just say that that's a vending, and then we could make you shut down or have to pay for a license, but we don't enforce that. In our time, we just don't enforce it. And basically, he told me that all the bylaws in this town are just not really enforced. There is no there is no actual person in this town whose job it is to enforce any bylaw. It's just that the City Hall just sort of comes up with what they think people should should think is a good bylaw, and then they announce it and they just hope that people voluntarily abide by it, and if they don't, then maybe a problem would come up and they have to do something about it, and then they will, if they have too many of these problems, then they'll have to have an officer whose job it is to administer bylaw to the public. So it got me thinking, half of these towns are small. Half of these small towns are already living almost in a state of anarchy, and people already aren't destroying everything and killing each other. They just don't know it. They think that they have this curtain of protection and authority, which really it's them and their neighbors who are that curtain of protection and authority already. So it won't be a big leap for a lot of these places to go from a statist society to a non-statist society. Yes, they do exist off of transfer payments, but they also, many people from these same places are paying into this tax system, and so they suffer in this way. So for every gain we are getting that way, we can see how we would not have a loss if without the state we might lose this particular gain. Someone benefits from sucking at the teat of the state, but other people, their neighbors, will be gaining when the state collapses by not having to pay into the state, such as myself. So I will definitely gain, and so it won't be hard really for a lot of these peace-loving small towns who have community spirit and don't really have laws and law officers that are very serious at all doing anything at this moment. It's not going to be a big change when we have a voluntarist society. I think these people can be convinced. They're already living in a voluntarist way. So maybe move to a small town and, find a way to take it over with anarcho-libertarian voluntarism. So that's so the lemonade stand. Yeah, basically they can just make up a regulation and enforce it. And if it was, then it would be enforced like every rule and every regulation is enforced by a death threat. So I took this opportunity to kind of educate people about this. I want and the joke, if it's just a joke, it's still kind of intimidated the children out of wanting to go out and start a lemonade stand. So is that the job of the officers in your neighborhood? Is it their job to drive around rolling up and making jokes to intimidate children out of having entrepreneurial spirit and profit-seeking endeavors? I don't think that that's what anyone wants the police for, so the police should know that, and everybody should have it clear in their mind that there is a movement for lemonade freedom. A lot of people didn't know this. I use this as an opportunity to educate a lot of people. I want lemonade stands. There should be no law about lemonade stands for children. There's no need for it. And see, that's the thing, is under a privatized system, we would never have a law against lemonade stands. We would still have laws against murder and laws against real crimes because there'd be a demand for it, but there's no real demand to have a law against a lemonade stand. So this sounds like a petty thing. Some people have said to me that this is just a small issue, it doesn't really matter, no one's going to care about it, but I think this is a big and important issue. It's these issues that I want to highlight here on Funk the State with your host Collin Sleuth, because it's these issues that seem small, that fly under the radar. Really, these are issues about corrupting civilization. And so the police and the state erode all the little things away. And it's life is made up of these little things that we can enjoy, these final goods, these final enjoyments that are stamped out of existence, literally, or are prevented from ever rising up. I've talked about them before on my show. I'm going to continue talking about things like this. So some of my issues might seem like they're very unusual from a political perspective, but what I'm trying to think about here, what I'm trying to focus on, is getting everybody to think about what seems like small issues but really stand as very important things. And some of these small things in life, like just having a cell phone or whatever, this is actually a remarkable and miraculous thing. Jeffrey Tucker talks about sort of like how we take for granted all these miraculous leaps forward and we just don't even notice them. That's what I'm trying to point out, is there's a bunch of unnoticed miracles that exist in life that we get to enjoy, and the state is constantly stamping those out. It's not just that it causes war, which of course other people talk about. Go listen to Scott Horton, and war is the evilest thing the state does. That and public education, public indoctrination. So we will always be talking about that. I'll always be ranting about that, but I also want to bring these little strange issues forward. So I'm going to try and cover some of these right now. You guys might have heard about this kid. This ties in with the lemonade stand. You know, just like lemonade stands, the Leawood shuts down Boy's Little Free Library. You might have seen these little free libraries in your neighborhood or around. And you could start one in your own neighborhood. You should start one in your own neighborhood just because they're cool, they're great. We don't need a public library running off government theft and coercion and violence and death threats in order to fund your local library. We could build our own libraries, and they would be better. So we could have children running the libraries. And that's what this boy tried to do. He tried to build his own library. He built it. It's a box, a wooden box on his property. It's a great idea. What a great way to encourage readership. What a great way to encourage literacy and everything we want in education. But of course, no, the state doesn't care about that. The state wants to crush that. The state hates education, doesn't like education. So don't, by putting your children in the state school, you're avoiding education for them. That's why one of the reasons why I'm drastically against government indoctrination. Don't put your children there. Homeschool them, unschool them, find a free school, life school your way through their childhood with them, and we'll see a story later, hopefully, that really highlights what I'm saying here. He loves reading. He built this thing, but it's not up to code. Basically, they say because it's not attached to the building, he's not allowed to have a separate building built on his property, and this one is a building because it's built and it looks like a building, and it's total nonsense. Go check it out. Leawood shuts down Boy's Little Free Library. You might have seen it passing by. That's what it's all about. Basically, the government hates children reading and wants to shut them down because what are they going to find out about, you know, by reading? This is what the state hates. And because we hate the state, we need to build more libraries, voluntarist libraries in neighborhoods run by children, and challenge the government. We'll find out. It's probably a code violation in my neighborhood too, but the thing is no one abides by it. So the police might drive around and try and say something, just like they did with the lemonade stand. You'll remember, if you watch my show, about Big Cheese. Let me see if I can find this one. Big Cheese. There was a story where they were going to shut down the cheesemakers. Blessed weren't the cheesemakers, apparently. The independent cheesemakers were using wood like they have for centuries to make their great fine cheeses. These cheeses are one of the highest forms of civilization, one of the greatest things available to man. Really, the reason I go to work is for things like these cheeses, so I can buy them and have moments of ecstasy. You should too. I mean, if you like cheese or not, but no one can deny that it's a great art and delicacy. And you know, some insider from Big Mozzarella used to work there. Then she gets a job at the FDA. It's a revolving door. We know this whole story. Regulations only exist for the rich. They were designed by the rich. Go read Gabriel Kolko. Just look that name up. Kolko. He was actually a Marxist, but so we aren't in alignment with him on that. But what he started to talk about in his books was how regulations were literally a conspiracy by oligarchs and corporations to be able to use the power of the government, pay off the government so that they could have an in and use the government to regulate out of existence their smaller competitors. And that's exactly what this woman, Monica Metz, who's an FDA employee through the revolving door system from Big Mozzarella. She comes in and starts making all these letters, sending out these letters to small cheese manufacturers saying the wood, it's not good, and you aren't conforming, and there's no scientific evidence, et cetera, et cetera. Turns out she was just doing this all on her own initiative. It has nothing to do with even what the FDA was trying to say. Of course, they just let her continue working there. They didn't stop her. She actually resulted in in one cheese manufacturer getting shut down. So we are worse off. Society and the planet are worse off by at least one cheese manufacturer. This is a disaster, and this is why we should oppose regulations, because the government isn't going to regulate for anyone's benefit. They're going to regulate for them and the oligarchs and keep things like small cheese makers out of competition with big, bad, evil mozzarella. It tastes like crap. You've got to try some of these fine cheeses, and you're never going to go back to the other, mainstream cheese. This is a kind of a hilarious and sad but true story, and it's a local story from my neighborhood. And I live in Canada, so there's some funny things that go on in Canada and funny laws. We're half socialists, but so is America. We're kind of half socialist in a different way than America is. In a lot of ways, we're more free. So everybody should come visit Canada. I would like to have some sort of freedom festival one day up here where I live. That's a long-term plan. It's a great place to visit. There's a lot of freedom here, and it's just not free enough. So I'm trying to convince my neighbors and everyone that we should move towards a freer society. So here's one step towards a freer society, but it's sort of crumbs from the table. The happy hour, everybody should know what happy hour is finally legal in the province I live in. So they've legalized happy hour. The government said it's okay for you to offer cheap drinks after work for an hour. There's a minimum drink price, and it's $3, so you're not legally allowed to trade for less than $3, and that's for a 5-ounce glass of wine. And the minimum drink price is $3 per drink. 2-for-1 drink specials are still prohibited, as they are considered a strategy likely to promote intoxication. So, that just can show you clearly the government is all about deciding how many ounces of wine you can get for how many pennies. They restrict and destroy all the great things in life, the little things that we seek out as the purpose of life, is to have a fine, enjoyable moment with your friend over a couple drinks, or to eat some fine cheese, or for your children to learn to read and build a library. All these things they want to shut down, they want to destroy it. In fact, they can't help but destroy these things. So it's not even because the government worker is some sort of evil person. I don't believe that cop is even an evil person. He just thinks that that's what his job is to do, and this is what's so horrible and why we need to wake people up to why the state is a horrible and destructive and evil mistake and should be abolished, just like other evils should be abolished from the human perspective. So we can have a discussion about what qualifies as evil, but I think that it should be clear, and we should at least attempt to convince everybody the state is definitely evil. So, these are all stories about horrible things the state is doing to shut down our life in small ways, and if you add them all up, it makes for a big deal. And you could live in a society where it was literally you had to fill out a piece of paper to go visit your friend down the street, or buy a piece of cheese, or everything had to be a license, everything had to be a restriction, and some bureaucrat was going to collect on that. There's been many societies like that restricted, bureaucratized society that is necessary and comfortable in a statist framework. And so that's part of the big problem with statism, is it creates this locked-in society that's very difficult for anyone to achieve anything outside of just their survival needs. And that's the whole civilization aspect that I want to talk about. I want more and greater civilization that I believe will come from more and greater freedom and less and weaker statism. So, I'm going to talk about some fun stories here. Elegant water, okay? So there's a simple, elegant invention that draws water from the air, and these things look like beautiful pieces of art. And they can be built for very small amounts of money, or for $5,000, and they literally gather, by design and aesthetic properties, they gather water out of the air, and they can do it best in deserts, and so we can get privatized water this way. We can privatize water out of the air into these giant cups, and solve the water crisis that may be lurking or is existing in many places. These women in this country are carrying water all around on their heads, and now they're going to be able to. These projects are going. Warco Water 2.0, Warco Water Towers are being built, and you should check them out. They're really inspiring and beautiful. We aren't going to have a water shortage. We're going to have a renaissance. We're going to discover how to make water. And this is part of it. And this is privatizing water, the true privatization, not selling off a river to Nestle, not selling off the lake to Nestle. No, thirsty African people building their own water towers that produce their own personal property that no one has a right to steal from them, and everybody can clearly see that that's true unless they want to be a criminal. So check out these elegant water towers. They're really quite beautiful. And this gets me to a discussion about fish farms, because we're talking about water. I read this article all about fish farms, and talking about fish farms off the West Coast and how they have a system where each part of each kind of fish in these gigantic ocean farms are feeding the other fish, so that there's very little impact on the environment. It's actually a kind of a filtration system that is cleaning the ocean. So these people are, and they're producing massive amounts of fish, and fish farms get a horrible rep, but it's all bull. I've worked on a fish farm. It's a beautiful, great thing. Fish farms are what we need. Fish farms are going to produce tons of food for the hungry masses, and they won't be relying on going out into the commons of the ocean to harvest, which kills a bunch of dolphins and whales. We don't want that. And it's also a way to privatize parts of the ocean. Distinct pieces of property on the ocean will be privatized because they're going to have a fish farm there. Also, I was sitting on the beach today and I was thinking about houseboats. And there's really no law about what kind of houseboat and how long you can live there. You could just go build one. You don't really own the land, but this would be a way also to privatize bays and lakes, is for people to start moving onto them. And it's a cheap way to build a house. So I'm going to look into houseboat lifestyle, and I think that it's sort of seasteading, but on a small scale. AgoraSeaSteading, maybe. It looks like a great lifestyle, one that I would really enjoy. There's a homeschooling family. This is another inspiring story. It's a homeschooling story who, they aren't libertarians or anything like that, but they are in spirit. You go read it on the New American. Homeschool family sends 7 kids to college, all by age 12. And you see this huge family. It's massive, and they're politically incorrect because they have a gigantic family. They had the oldest up to grade 3, and they said there was too much homework, and so it was stressful for her. So they just took her out of school, and they started homeschooling herself, and everything, went rosy right after that. She's doing super well, and she's in college by 12, and then all her brothers and sisters are all in college by 12. You can go read all about it. And they have some really great comments in here about their strategy at homeschooling. They basically had a very fluid and individual and student orientated unschooling strategy, and all their kids are going off to school and becoming doctors, youngest doctor, like airline pilots and everything like this. So what I'm trying to say with this article is, go check this out. Look at how the kinds of success stories that we're getting in homeschooling are unheard of. Now, every family could have this. We could have every family with 3 or 10 children who are all at university level by the time they're 12. And most university people that I meet who come out of university are basically, they think like 12-year-olds anyway. So I think might as well get the education that they can get. Serve it to a 12-year-old. She or he is probably going to do a lot better with it, and then they have another 10 years to figure out the real world, which we want. I'm not saying everybody should go to college, but watching 12-year-olds go to college because they were homeschooled and unschooled at that is a very inspiring thing. I want you to realize it's not impossible. You don't have to be a professor. You don't have to be Albert Einstein. You can homeschool and unschool yourself and your children. You can start your own television station, just like Mike Shanklin did, and start a revolution. You can start your own TV show and get your thoughts organized. So with that, I've kind of sped through a bunch of these issues. I'm sorry I missed you guys last week. I hope you guys stick with me and are enjoying my show. If so, like it, click the thumbs up and like all the stuff, and go click through to my Facebook, go click through to my liberty.me or my Twitter account. You can sign up and keep up with everything I'm talking about. So this has been Funk the State with your host, Collin Sleuth. I'm glad to have been with you. I can't wait to see what we're going to do in the future. So thank you all for joining me here on the Voluntary Virtues Network. My name is Collin Sleuth. Peace.